Hi, I'm Katie Crane, and this is the Pilates Lounge. Hi, I'm Katie Crane, and today I'm coming to you to speak on a topic that absolutely fascinates me. And many times in my teaching, when I have considered this topic, it has allowed me to not only explore the body with my client or the body that I'm working with in a way that is extremely unique. And I believe it's something that Pilates really lends itself to, is allowing us to explore the body in these unique ways. But it has also shed light on many idiosyncrasies and issues that I see in clients when it comes to these relationships. What I'm talking about is the arches in the body or the domes in the body. Many people come to us to practice Pilates because they want to, in inverted commas, improve their posture, or in inverted commas, improve their core. The reality of it is these things do happen in Pilates, but they don't happen necessarily because we are actively fixing posture or because we are actively encouraging our clients to recruit those core muscles. It happens simply by teaching the body to move well throughout all ranges of movement and in all capabilities. But when somebody comes into the studio and they present themselves with pain or discomfort or dysfunction, then I'm always looking at the relationship between these arches or these domes. And in my eyes or in my mind, I'm always connecting the domes or the arches above and below the issue that they may be presenting with. So I'm going to give you an example of a lady that I worked with yesterday. She had actually been to the studio over 10 years ago when she was pregnant. And at the time, she came to me with pelvic pain. She was carrying a child, and it's quite common for us to see women when they're pregnant with pelvic pain. She had pain at the pubic symphysis. So either the weight of the baby and the laxicity of those ligaments were causing her pain, and or for some women, it's the two ilium out of whack a little bit, and that pubic symphysis is not quite in good alignment. I forget what it was with her because it was over 10 years ago. Actually, when she came into the studio yesterday, I knew her face, but I couldn't recall working with her. But she reminded me that we did, in fact, work together. She had subsequently had another child. Her children now are 10 years old and 6 years old, and now she has this pubic pain again. And it's not completely out of the ordinary, but it's certainly not as common for women once they've had their children to then end up with this pubic pain. Because normally what happens is once the load of the pregnancy is taken off the pelvis, then the inflammation goes away and then they no longer have the pain. Sometimes women will have pain again. Normally I see that it's from pelvic floor hypertonicity or a low tight tone or a pelvic floor laxity, so just a low tone in general. Their glutes might be quite weak. Transverse abdominals might be quite weak. So those muscles that support the pelvic girdle and help stabilize may not be functioning well. But sometimes, and this is where I want to speak to you about today, it's actually the arches in the body, either above or below the pelvis, that may be a part of the issue. So when this lady came to me yesterday, she had gone to see a pelvic floor specialist, a physiotherapist who works with women and has done extra study specifically around pelvic floor. And she just felt like she wasn't getting the information that she needed, or she wasn't getting the support and the guidance that she was looking for. So she came back to me. And as soon as we started discussing the sensations that she was getting in her pelvis and her daily activities and how old her children were and her stress levels, how she's sleeping, all of these different lifestyle factors, she said that none of this had been discussed with her by this pelvic floor specialist. The pelvic floor specialist had literally only looked at the muscles of the pelvis. She had not discussed any lifestyle factors, and she certainly had not discussed the relationship between the experience that this woman was having in her pelvis and what may be happening above and below her pelvis. So the first thing that I look at when I'm working with a woman, especially if she's not pregnant, I look at the health of her feet and I look at her upper body posture. So I can't even remember where I learnt about the arches of the body or the domes of the body. It potentially was Madeline Black. I've done a lot of workshops with Madeline over the years. If you haven't read her book, Centered, I think it's called, definitely look up Madeline's work. But I may have also picked some of this up from Philip Beach, who talks about embryological development as well. In any case, I'll pop that in the show notes, but there are definitely a couple of people that are really interesting when it comes to movement and development and the relationship of things that are happening in our body when we can look at the body as a whole. So the arches of the body, I think of starting at the feet. So we have the arch of the foot, and there's main arches, and then there's smaller arches as well. So today I'm just going to talk about the main arches. So the arches of the feet are the foundation of the body, which is partly, I believe, why footwork must never be overlooked in Pilates. We can practice footwork on any of the machines, but the value of footwork is forever. On top of the arch of the foot, then we have the arch of the pelvic floor. So if we think of the pelvic floor, it looks like a hammock, and when we contract the pelvic floor, it elevates or creates this little dome in the body. The next arch in the body is the arch of the diaphragm. Also, this beautiful big dome-shaped muscle in the body. And then we have the arch of the roof of the mouth. And we could also think of the arch of the roof of the mouth as the very crown of the head or the top of the skull. Now, this is how I think about these arches in Pilates, because remembering that a lot of people are coming to us looking to, in inverted commas, correct their posture or improve their posture. Or if all of those arches, the foot, pelvic floor, diaphragm, roof of the mouth, crown of the head, are all stacked one on top of the other, are all working proficiently, then we have good posture. The beauty of working with people in a Pilates setting is that we actually access all of those arches within the session. And maybe that's not how you think of the body when you're looking at improving the way that somebody is moving, or helping them with correct joint placement, or helping them with correct body alignment, posture, however you want to think about it. But ultimately, what we are looking at is the stacking of, or the alignment of, those arches in the body. So if somebody comes to me with an issue in one of those areas, so this woman yesterday, she came to me with pain in her pelvis. Her women's health specialist only looked at the pelvic floor, but I start by looking at the arches of the feet. How is she standing? Where is her weight distribution? Are her arches high, normal, or does she have flat feet? Does she wear supports in her shoes? Is she wearing shoes at home, or is she barefoot at home? And whatever she's choosing to do, what is that experience for her? So very quickly, before we even started looking at the pelvis, this client told me that she suffers from foot pain, plantar fasciitis, that she cannot walk around barefoot. Where I live in the tropics, so we have cyclone-coated houses, so we have a lot of concrete houses. Some people have floorboards, but nobody has carpet, so we're always on very hard surfaces when we're in any type of building. Well, she said that she cannot walk around barefoot at home because it hurts her feet too much. So to me, that was already a red flag. That's already given me some really imperative information so that I can start to work with this client in her full body to help the issue that she's dealing with, or the issue that she's come to me for, which is the pain in her pelvis. So straight away, I start with doing some foot release work. She was absolutely astounded that her feet would have any relationship to her pelvis. And in fact, when she stood on, I have these little half domes, I guess they're about the size of a squash ball, but they're cut in half and they're quite hard. So I got her to stand first between the knuckles of each toe, but then through the arch of the foot. So I get her to start just behind the ball of the foot, and then we go down further towards the calcaneus, or the heel of the foot, and we go through the arch of the foot. And once she got right underneath the talus, it was very, very painful for her. So that indicates to me that there's some sort of malalignment, some sort of adjustment that needs to happen in those bones. There's some bones that stabilize the bone of the leg, the tibia, as it goes down into the foot. There's something called a screw mechanism. And when we are doing our feet in straps, for example, I always make sure that the strap is right just where the calcaneus starts to become of the foot. That's where we want to have the strap when we're doing feet in straps, to help A, create the arch of the foot, B, if somebody is really tight in the arches, it actually allows for that fascia to let go a little bit. But if somebody is flat-footed, it's going to do the opposite. It's going to invigorate that arch area. But the strap should fit just right where the talus is in the arch of the foot. But she was very, very sore through there. And when I got her to stand on these little half domes, or these little domes, that pain in her foot radiated straight up to her pelvis, right in the area that she has been experiencing pain when she's doing things like going up and down stairs, or she enjoys walking for exercise. But she did say that now when she's walking, she's not able to take a very wide stride, because then her pubic symphysis really bothers her. So we talked about the importance, A, of good arch support when she's walking, but B, releasing those bones in her feet, helping to release the fascia in her feet, so that then her pelvis, it may not, but it may sit differently, or it may even just help release some of those tight muscles around the pelvis to then take away some of the discomfort. Once I've released the feet with her, then I released the muscles around the pelvis. So then I'm a fan of the orange Franklin ball. If you haven't looked at Eric Franklin's work, not only is he the master of imagery, if you enjoy imagery, he also has some great releasing tools as well. So he has different colored balls for different types of release. I'm a fan of using the orange Franklin ball to help release the pelvic floor and also help release the very top of the hamstring. So I got my client to sit on the trap table, just because that's a perfect height, with her legs just dangling over the side. And then we pop the orange Franklin ball just under the inside of her sits bone, and she just sits there. So she's right at the top of the hamstring, but also she's right within the pelvic floor area on one side. That also sent a little bit of radiating pain through the pelvis that she's pretty used to. But after a while, that pain did start to subside. And once the pain subsides, then I ask the client to come off of the ball and then just sit on the trap table with nothing underneath her pelvis and feel if there's any space in that area that she had just been sitting on. And lo and behold, she said that she felt now that there was a dome shape in that pelvic floor area. So that would indicate that potentially, and remember, I'm not able to do internal examinations. So a lot of the work that I do and that you do is guided by the feedback that we're receiving from the client. And it's exploratory work. A lot of it is literally trying things out, seeing what works. If it doesn't, that's okay. We pop it aside. If it does work, we pop that in our toolkit and potentially we try it on the next client that comes to us with the same issue. And if it works for multiple clients, then you start to think, well, this is part of me gathering evidence. This is part of what I know has worked with multiple people. Potentially, it's part of what I generally do when somebody with this, i.e. pelvic pain, comes to me. So we did the same Franklin bull release on the other side. On one side, she got more release than the other side. As it has it, the side that she got more release on was the same side as she has more tightness in that foot. So the tightness in the fascia of the foot or in the muscles of the foot, maybe some of those bones in the foot have dropped a little bit or are a little bit malaligned, then that has had a knock-off effect on the experience that she's having in the pelvis. So we did all of that release work first before I jump on the machines or before I start to give her any other work. Now, when I'm working with somebody with that pelvic pain, the general rule is that I'm not going to do something like scooter or Russian splits, anything that's taking the legs into that wide stride movement. I want to try and keep everything pretty close together to start with. And one of the questions that I always have for these clients is, how does it feel when you are walking or when you're taking a deep stride? And or how's it feeling when you're going up and down stairs? And normally, if they're quite acute, then they will let you know that that is one of the movements that bothers them. So that's one of the movements that I'm not going to do. What happens when we take that wide stride is it almost can create like a shearing of the two bones of the pelvis. One is shearing forwards, one backwards as the leg strides forwards. And that, if you're inflamed in that pubic symphysis, then that inflammation is going to get really bothered by that shearing effect. So you want to avoid that type of movement. But the type of things that do generally feel good is all of your footwork. May need to explore whether or not the wide V is appropriate at this stage. If they are a little bit unstable in the pelvis, then a wide V may not be appropriate. That's the sort of feedback you're looking for from the client on the day, and that could be variable anytime they come in. And when it comes to single leg, especially when I'm starting out with this type of client, normally because part of the issue is that they have weak glutes, so I'm going to be doing things like side-lying footwork or clams, potentially clams using a band around the thighs, but definitely exercises to get those glutes working. What I do really like about side-lying is if you've got some laxicity in the ligaments in the pelvis and low muscle tone that's not holding those joints together well for stability, when you lay on your side, it almost encourages a little bit of closure through those joints. And so that's normally going to feel quite comfortable for the person who has this pelvic discomfort or this pelvic inflammation. So side lying is generally really good. And quite often, say if I've done side lying clams, side lying glutes on the reformer, then I might go to a lighter spring and get them to do some side-lying arm work as well. Side-lying arm work is exactly the same as supine arm work. So you can do lat pull, T, and tricep press. When you're laying on the side, it's going to just be with that top arm, single arm, on a quite light spring, what I like about it is cueing for the person to feel the underneath side of the torso lifting a little bit. So you're trying to get a little bit of transverse abdominals and obliques connected away from the carriage. And as they get stronger, you could go through that side-lying arm work and add in the top leg extending over the reformer foot bar to really get those glutes activated. Sometimes if somebody's in that acute phase, they're not quite going to be strong enough yet, but definitely food for thought down the line. Now, once we've worked on specifically that pelvic girdle strength, I'm also looking for things like, how is she breathing? What are her stress levels like? So we talked about that. This client, a 10 and a 6-year-old, she's still got the 6-year-old in her bed, which is really common for children. There's nothing wrong with it. It does sometimes mean that then mum isn't getting the sleep that she needs. So maybe she's walking around quite tired. Maybe she's a little bit stressed out. Her husband works away, so she's got the kids full time by herself a lot of the time, so she's constantly running after their needs. So we discussed the importance of learning to take breaks and doing things like a heavy sigh. A heavy sigh is fantastic to help not only take in a big deep breath, but also that the action of a heavy sigh does help regulate the vagus nerve. And the vagus nerve helps regulate inflammation in the body, helps relax the body, helps connect with that parasympathetic nervous system. So some breath work is really, really beneficial for these people as well. And then last of all, I'm looking at the arch of the roof of the mouth and where the head sits when she's standing. So I've got the Coraline at my studio. If you don't have a Coraline, then you could use a low reformer. If you're going to use a high reformer, definitely pop the long box down so that then this client could stand on the long box before getting onto the reformer, just because remember, we want to avoid taking wide strides. But on the Coraline, I got her to do some really small and simple skater. So standing facing one way with both legs pushing out and in, that skater variation. But not too far. Part of this work is teaching the client how to keep those arches stacked one on top of the other. And I did notice, and this is quite common, I've seen it a lot, when women who have this pelvic dysfunction, the tight feet, quite often as they go into skater, their head wants to push forward. So I always imagine it's like they're chickens eating food off the ground. So we talked about the importance of keeping that beautiful long neck, almost feeling like that the head is floating off of the shoulders like a helium balloon, and only going out so far that the head is not pushing forwards. So part of this is recognizing that she's got tight neck and shoulders. Now, I already know that she's a busy mum. She's told me this. I already know that she's not getting enough sleep, that she's running around after the kids. She's probably carrying the kids' bags all the time. She's the one doing the shopping. So I'm putting together all these lifestyle factors that I know that she's experiencing that is having a knockoff effect or is related to all of these things that she's experiencing in the body. She's experiencing the symptoms of her lifestyle in the pelvis. The pelvis is part of the issue, but it's not the be all and end all, and it's not the only part of the body that I'm looking at. So working with this client is just a stark reminder of the importance of looking at the body as a whole. But for me, it reminded me of the beauty of how Pilates does view these beautiful arches in the body. And it just got me thinking, I know that that's not something that I was taught when I first learnt my Pilates repertoire. It took me years, or like I said, I'm not sure who I learnt it from, but once I understood those big arches in the body, if I'm always working with them in mind, then there's so many things that I can be doing above and below what the client might be experiencing to help them move forwards, just accessing some really basic Pilates repertoire. I hope that you've enjoyed this conversation as much as I have. Obviously, I absolutely love talking about the body and exploring ideas. So if you have any ideas that you would love to explore or for me to discuss, please make sure that you reach out to me on social media at The Pilates Professional, via my website, The Pilates Professional. Now, before I finish up today, I just want to remind you, if you have enjoyed this episode, I would love it if you like and share it with your Pilates professional and movement loving friends so that we can get the word out there and really create a community right here in this hub. Be sure to check out my website, thepilatesprofessional.com.au, and have a look if you can find any workshops, which I'm sure you can, that you may be needing right now. Remember, I also do a 6-month reformer teacher training mentor program. I call it a mentor program because I literally personally mentor each student through their own program until they are ready to teach reformer. It's what I specialize in. And I think that this is one of the biggest missing links in our industry right now, is that we have these wonderful diploma level training workshops that people can do to become very comprehensively trained in Pilates. But when it comes to reformer, it's so wishy-washy out there that you could become an instructor online with no personal access to a mentor ever, or you could become a reformer instructor as a stepping stone to diploma level training. So where I come into it is I just do reformer teacher training that is recognised and recommended by the Pilates Association of Australia, which means that my students then become members of PAA. It's super important for our industry and it's what our students deserve. So if you know somebody who is looking to become a reformer teacher, then this is where you want to send them, thepilatesprofessional.com.au. They can reach out to me. I can have a call with them and see if I have a program that is coming up that is suitable for them. And or I also do a host of online workshops for you to expand your repertoire and your understanding specifically of the Pilates work. Thank you so much for joining me. I look forward to you listening to the next episode next week. I'm Katie Crane, the Pilates Professional.